I love sending out gift orders, and these beauties are a top pick. So I figured this week I'd show you how I make them. These start off life as a computer file. I design it up on my computer and then send it over to the software for the laser. After that, load on the machine, press start, and sit back and watch. I don't tend to sit and watch it too much anymore, but it is really cool to see your design come to life. The accuracy of the laser is great, so once the top is done, I switch out the material for the bottom pieces and cut them as well. This makes sure that they actually match. After the bottoms come off the laser, I get them prepped, which means branding them, giving them a light sand, and staining the back. At that point, then they're ready for some paint. Everyone's got their tricks for doing things just a little bit faster. For me, staining, I use a foam roller. It allows me to spread the stain really quickly, and then I can just wipe off the extra. And when you're doing a lot of these, it makes a difference. Two to 3 coats of paint with a light sand in between, and then it's up on the drying rack while I make the top piece. To make the rim of the tray, I start off by collecting up all the pine that didn't quite make the cut for any of the floating shelves, whether there was a defect, or there was a knot, or it just wasn't working. Since the tray parts get cut out of the same material, but they get cut quite a bit smaller, I'm able to cut around the knots a little bit better, and then I don't waste quite as much. Because I've made so many of these, I have a template piece. And so anytime I need to cut out more of these, I just set my saw using the template piece. I don't end up measuring anything anymore. To maximize cutting around as many knots as I can, I do a bit of a back and forth between the table saw and the chop saw. The first is cutting them all to width, then I take it to the chop saw and cut them to length. This back and forth allows me to weed out a lot of the defects. Then to the table saw for a little bit of thicknessing, since I prefer the rim of these to be just a little bit thinner than the standard material. Setting up the saws with a template piece makes things so much easier, and it allows me to make sure that I get these things the way I want them every time. Last cuts for these is to create this little rabbit. This will create a little groove that allows me to put the top piece as well as the back piece of the tray into it. They're a pretty easy cut to make on the table saw. You run them through on one side first, then readjust, run them through again, and you end up with a little notch. Though you do have to make sure you're cutting at the right spot when you do the second round, which is why I neatly stack all of my little pieces to make sure that they're always coming out of the pile the same spot, same direction. I've cut them on the wrong side before. Next step is gluing up the rim and attaching the nice lattice piece into it. I glue these up the same way a lot of box makers do, by using a little bit of tape at every single joint, lining them up nice and tight, putting the glue in, and then kind of curling everything together. Once I have them all joined, I put a little bit more glue in, and then I set the lattice piece in. Then we set them aside and let them dry overnight. After they're dry, we remove the tape and give them a really good sand to remove all the saw marks that happened while I was milling up these pieces. There's always a little bit of glue that kind of squeezes out on the inside, and I can't get to that with a sander, so I take some chisels and some knives and I clean it up. Now for a super fun part, adding the stain. This really brings out the beauty of these trays. Sometimes it can be a bit hard getting into all the little nooks and crannies, especially around where the rim and the lattice piece meet. So I use a paintbrush just to get the stain in there, and then I wipe up the extra. Once everything has a chance to dry, now it's time for glue up. And this is where cutting out the base as well as the top on the laser comes in really handy, because they match perfectly. So a little bit of glue, and then I can just flip these things in and clamp them up. I always put a rim of glue around the outside, but the parts through the middle are dependent on the style of the pattern. Some of them need a little bit more glue than others, like this arrow pattern that has so many loose little pieces, every single one of them needs to be glued down. Then on to clear coating. This is the last step. They get multiple coats on the top and bottom with light sands in between each. I use a polyacrylic clear coat, which allows the trays to be a little bit water resistant and also a little bit heat resistant. So if you put a warm teapot onto them, it's not going to damage the finish. After they dry, they get packed up and sent off to their new homes. I have preset designs for these, but I always love seeing what people come up with, mixing the patterns and the stains and the colors. Always something so cool and personal about it. Hi, I'm Liz. I run a handmade decor business, and I make some quick videos on the products that I make, as well as projects I do around my house. You can find some of these in the links around here. Thanks for watching. Cheers!